Hey, Axis and Allies players, a good captain here. Welcome to round 8. Austro-Hungary's round 8. In this game of Axis and Allies 1914, out-of-box setup, no bid. Okay, let's review USA and Italy. Italy and USA's round 7. The Italians purchased 4 infantry and an artillery, spending all their IPCs. I think that's right. Okay. I forget what he ended up doing here. Yeah, he did an amphib. Oh, okay, I'm getting my games mixed up. Alright, so it looks like he went for the Syrian desert with the Italians. Yeah, okay. And a blocker clearance team was sent into Tyrolia. Okay, so here we go. In Tyrolia, Italians wipe them out, and the Austrians miss. In the Syrian desert, another blocker clearance team didn't go my way. Okay, so we shot one down. The CP missed on that one. Okay, again, it shouldn't be separate movements. I might have to check my opponent here pretty soon if he keeps doing stuff like that. But okay, purchase for Americans: 6 infantry, 1 artillery. 1, 2. That makes sense. 5 transports here. Wow. 7 pieces. That's 3.5 transports. So some inefficiency here. I like that. It's the CP. Yeah, this was interesting. So he he moves. Man, this is always weird to watch. Wow, that's bizarre. Okay, so he took the Spanish-Moroccan army and put it into Albania? And he took everything that was in Albania and shoved it into Smyrna. That I had already reviewed. Yeah, and then he brings his 2 transports over. Okay. Okay. So when the Americans hit here, they actually have an offshore. Yep, and the offshore hits. Wow, they rolled hot. Yeah, wiped everybody out. At least we rolled par back at them. Yeah, see, the Entente had a couple of good turns here, for sure. So... Huh. Interesting. Okay. It's always interesting to me to see what people do with the USA. Nobody does the same thing. Well, I guess they kind of do. They always put pieces down here into the Med, but take Spain, don't take Spain. My thing is just the 4-4 4-4 transport, 8 transports split into 2 groups, very boringly pushing pieces across France and into Italy or wherever they're needed. I like to play my USA as unsexy as possible at maximum efficiency with regards to economy, and just sort of let it go like that. But okay, an aggressive USA tends to be the more popular. All right. Anyway, let's get on with it. Right. The purchase is 1 armor, 1 infantry, or 1 artillery, and max infantry. Yep. And now we have to discuss this position. So as I was reviewing what happened here offline, it's better and worse than I thought. I don't think I'll talk about why it's worse, but it might come up while I talk about why it might be better. So one of the things that happened, if we review the history, and this is why I do like to kind of review and study the dice, at least when I'm trying to solve a game. Once I get to the point where I feel comfortable to play over the board, I don't really care so much because I feel comfortable understanding what can happen, and so then understanding the stats is much less necessary. But in the beginning, when you're studying a game, I think it's vital to cracking it as quick as you can. So this German attack went fantastically. So despite this total foul up in Karelia, which was a 96% chance, just so everybody understands what 96% means, that's one. If you played this game 25 times and did the same attack, you'd see this once. So that's how rare, this thing is. This isn't like getting shot down by an AA gun. That's 1 in 6. That's almost there's a half order of magnitude difference there. That's just a massive difference. But okay, 66643. But okay, let's get out over that. So one of the big silver lining here is that the 4 German fighters wiped out the 3 Russian fighters at no loss. So that's just free chicken. That's 18 IPCs and material just taken off the map, free of charge. And then the battle in Moscow. I won't go through everything, but what was expected here was 22 hits, more than likely 22. So the Germans shot 4 pieces up. In other words, 4 Russian pieces that were off out of line of the center of the bell curve in terms of results was in favor of the Germans. So 4 more pieces were removed than otherwise would have most of the time been removed. And then the Russians shot 72 halved is 36. So they should have hit 36, and they only hit 33. So they shot down by 3. So it's a 7-point differential in favor of the Germans. That's fairly significant. And when you take into account the losses of the Russian fighters, what should have been a clearly uphill fight for the Germans in terms of material exchange ended up being 3 IPCs in favor of the Russians. That's it. That's it. It should have been quite a bit more than that. So we got away with murder there, essentially. But I would honestly trade that back just to have Karelia under German control. And I'll explain why, and I'll show you why in a moment. Let's go back to the current game. So I have to make a decision. Am I attacking with everything I have as the Ukrainians because now the Russian army can evacuate, or not? And I've decided not to. It's not intuitive to surrender your capital, and that is the move the Russians can play here. They can surrender the capital. So if that doesn't make sense, let's just start pushing pieces, and it'll make more sense as we move on. So I'm using this as my template. So it's 221 over here. Okay, so I'm going to send 2 infantry and 2 artillery over here, and I think I'm sending a fighter too. Yeah, so it looks like 2-2 and a fighter is 98%. So that's 1 in 50 games if we fail on that one. Okay, and then in Belarus, again, we're going to touch it with a fighter. And this one is 3-3. And then this, again, proven out by the stats. Okay. As you can see here, it's like a 97. So like 1 in 45 games, 1 in 43 games will go the way of the Russian. But I'm trying to hedge, and maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should push it to 100, but I don't know. I'm in for a penny, in for a pound at this point. I already have one. They already have one out, so you know. Okay, and then then we have to consider the Sevastopol thing. Since I'm presenting for, or I'm setting up for a Russian revolution, I don't want to take Sevastopol. I want to close that off. And during a Russian revolution, Russian units that are outside of Russian territory, how to say this? Russian units that when the armistice is offered and the CP accept, Russian units outside of originally Russian-controlled territories are just removed from play. So the boats go away, and anybody in Romania would go away because Romania is not an originally Russian-controlled territory. So if I had captured Karelia, I would leave this open. I wouldn't even move a blocker in there because he would disappear, and then I would just have to send someone from Ukraine down to reoccupy it, and the game continues. But given that there is an out and there is a possibility of him continuing the game and causing me a headache by putting a Russian piece in Romania, I will move that there. And Ukraine is a bit different. So because Ukraine is an originally controlled territory, what we want to do is leave this force behind. Oh no, it's 3-2. Sorry. Click, click, 1, 2, 3. So when I leave 3 infantry and 2 fighters behind, it means there's, I think, a 4 or 5% chance that this fellow can create a contested zone. The reason I don't want a contested zone here is because then I won't get the IPCs for it for the remainder of the game. Contested zones can still be entered by CP troops, but the value is essentially 0. Yeah. Yeah, so I've had that happen in another game where I think I left 2 infantry on defense, and then the dude knew the revolution was coming, so he plunged his infantry in there, and there's a 25% chance of creating a contested zone under those conditions, and he did. So he took Livonia off of me for the rest of the game. So, things you learn the more you play. Ukraine is a 3 IPC territory. I don't want to risk it. So, and then of course we're not fighting in Moscow. So I'll remove these pieces. I didn't want to do the. I'll show you how to do that. What I mean by that. But we're not fighting in Moscow. So we have combat here, combat here. Down in the west front. This is where we need to start getting serious about this thing. Oh, sorry. Galicia is not supposed to go to Romania. Galicia is not supposed to go to Romania. Pause. Yeah, we're sending an inf from Serbia into Romania to do that blocker mission. Trieste moves out. We go to Tyrolia. Vienna goes to Tyrolia. Okay, we're on the warpath now against Italy. We're shifting focus away from Russia and towards Italy. We send a blocker into Trieste, and everybody else is going to jump on these 2 Albania units. So I'm happy with this Tyrolia attack. I'm going to remove 3 Italian pieces free of charge. These tanks will absorb all 3 hits. So it doesn't matter. We don't even really need to roll except to make sure we get 3 hits, and I think this is a smash. Down here, pretty much the same thing, except I only have 1 armor, so unless they get 2 hits, I can take off, what's that, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 17 IPCs worth of material free of charge, which, of course, we must take that. And then the last piece to this play is to push these boats, and I'm not going to do it yet because as soon as I do, it will roll. But I'm going to push this battleship and this cruiser down into this Mediterranean Sea zone. Now, in Axis and Allies 1914, you do not need to fight with boats. I'm simply moving in there to create a hostile sea zone, and I'll demonstrate why right now. If I pass the mine check, then the Russian boats will fight me or not. Yeah, this is a risky move, but let me just cut to the chase and say that if we get past the Russian turn in decent order, the French only have a battleship, whereas we have a battleship and a cruiser. There's no British or French anywhere else. Then the Italians go, and we would be able to gum up their transport. And God, on the outside chance that we're still afloat at that time, then we would gum up these American transports as well. It could to a certain extent, but after talking it all up, I've talked myself out of that. I guess I'll sit put. But the reason I was going to move out was because the Italians will clearly take Trieste. This guy clearly is okay with sending blocker teams, full strength blocker teams, to their death. So this Trieste will fall to the Italians. Flipping the mine to the Entente, and this American battle fleet will almost certainly come up here. 3 cruisers and a battleship versus a cruiser and a battleship is 98%. So I have to say so long to my fleet. Either way. So should we sally forth into the Med and try to cause some disruption and damage, or should we stay put? Hmm. Yeah, I've decided to push them out into the Med. So here we go with the mine roll. This is now a hot game. Everything is live. We push. So I know I'll be fired on. There's a 30, I think almost a 31% chance someone gets dinged. Whew, we made it. So when we click done, uh, so there it is. Attack units in C zone? No, we're not. We're not. We're just going to camp there. That's all we're going to do. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to just demonstrate that I'm not attacking in Russia. So I'll just remove all these pieces. 36 infantry, 4 artillery. Put them back at the end of our turn. So now we do the battle in Tyrolia. This is a stomp. Doesn't matter what kind of hits he does or doesn't get. Battle in Albania, also a stomp. He missed. Okay. Again, that didn't really matter for him because all this armor made those dice a moot point. Even if he'd rolled super hot, the most he could have got was a single kill. Battle on Moscow doesn't happen. Clear that. These ones kind of get my heart racing now that I failed once so badly. But okay, that went okay. And the Tatterstan battle. Okay, that went okay. Okay. Hit me when it counted. Okay, so that's it. And then we put the, 36 infantry and 4 back in. Austro-Hungary, 36 and 4. Okay. And so again, the idea here being, if this Karelia thing hadn't exploded as badly as it did, there's nothing for the Russian player to do, absolutely nothing for him to do except attack and get as many pieces as he can. And that's where you get the ROI, the return on investment from that uphill battle the Germans had to fight, right? Because you encase the capital, you make it so they can't retreat, and there's just one option. You try to shoot your way out, and of course it's a massively negative number for the Russians, and then it balances out. I think the more I play this game, I feel like the Russians might be best, and the CP might be best to think of trying to just trade pieces. You, of course, want to try to get the edge on your opponent, but if both sides end with, if Russia's demise ends with both sides having basically gone tit for tat, then GG to both sides. That's how I feel now. I leave my mind open to being changed, of course, but on to the next thing. Yeah, we leave the transport there just to bait somebody into coming in. But okay, Austro-Hungarian non-combat move. Yeah, no, we're done. We drop the units in, and that's it. So, a very brief discussion on what I fear most. What I fear most, and this is not intuitive, and I'm kind of banking on this because I've made this mistake before. I got into the same position where I was the CP, and I just said, hey, I'll just make this quick, and there's 3 adjacent territories. Moscow's this, that, and the other. It's I'm going to accept the Russian Revolution, and that's not. I'm sorry, that's not a. And when you're in this sort of situation, unless you have the capital completely surrounded, the Russians, and you have a contested capital, the Russians can always do this: retreat into Karelia, smash that German army, and give up the capital on purpose. There's 13 IPCs in the bank, so even though they spend money on units, those units go back into the box. The IPC equivalent comes out and goes to the player who the Germans and the Austrians would have to decide amongst themselves who takes over Moscow, and then the money goes to that player. Now, you have a situation where this is especially bad for me in a certain way, and that's regards to Finland, which we'll touch on in a second. But you have this rather powerful Russian army. The Germans are sapped of all strength. They're not competitive, and the turn order doesn't help us either as the CP. But what we would be obligated to do as the CP on our next turn is take the Austro-Hungarians and we have to move everybody into Livonia. We'd have to move every piece there. Obviously, we'd move the Germans out as well. So we vacate Moscow, leave it completely empty. Why? Because there's absolutely no reason that I could see, at least, to defend the capital. If the Russians come back in, remember, at the end of a Russian turn, if the Russian capital is controlled or contested and there's three territories adjacent, the revolution happens. So they have an incentive to not come back into their capital, a pretty strong one. So long as the British don't come up here and relieve these territories, that's what's true. So you don't have to defend the capital. We stack Livonia and we pin this army in place, but they're pinning us in place, and unless we reinforce the Austro-Hungarians with more units, that's the way it's going to be. What makes it worse for the CP in this particular case is that Finland is currently under CP control, and since Russia no longer exists as a power, this can be flipped to the British, which have transports. The minefield's been deactivated since the Russians are there, so they can float on in, and absolutely should. Land 2 troops, flip Finland to fight for the British. I'm stuck with this bag of crud in my hands with this transport purchase. It made sense perfectly, made great sense until this Karelia foul up. And I can't flip troops back without running the minefield. So it is kind of a complex situation, and here's the bottom line up front. I'm actually kind of glad this happened. And if he takes this, again, it's not intuitive. It's really not intuitive to just surrender your capital and your IPCs and all that junk. Going out in a blaze of glory totally could be what happens here. But I have not seen this yet, and I'm very interested, if this is the way it plays out, to play it out this way. I'd like to see how to run the CP in this situation. I've stacked, I think, 12 or 13 completed games now. I haven't seen this yet, and it's good for your Axis and Allies resume to see and to fight in these different situations. So I look at this as an opportunity to learn. It would have been a quick, clean, neat kill if the percentages had gone the way they should have gone, but that's okay. I'm seeing the brighter side here, or at least trying to convince myself so. So anyway, hope this was interesting. Thanks for watching. All the best from the good captain, and bye-bye.